Daniel walked alone down the narrow streets of the alien mining colony, his boots scraping against the cracked stone ground. The air smelled of metal and dust, a mix of smoke from factories and the bitter tang of strange fuels burned by alien machines. He kept his hands in his worn jacket, pulling it close to his chest as if the thin fabric could protect him from the cold winds that blew through the settlement. For weeks, Daniel had been trying to find steady work, but jobs for humans were rare. The colony belonged to the Zaith, a tall reptilian species that considered humans weak, only fit for cleaning or carrying heavy loads. Daniel had taken whatever he could, lifting crates, sweeping floors, even digging in waste piles for scraps of copper wire. Still, it was never enough. Each night his stomach ached from hunger, and he told himself that tomorrow he would find something better. He thought about Earth often. Back home he had worked as a technician, repairing machines with steady hands and sharp focus. But after Earth's economy collapsed, desperate men like him had taken transport jobs to alien colonies, hoping to build a new life. Instead, Daniel had found himself stuck in a world where humans were invisible, overlooked, and left to struggle. As the Seu, twin moons rose above the colony, Daniel turned into an abandoned district on the edge of the city. The buildings here were crumbling, windows shattered, their walls marked with strange alien graffiti. He liked coming here because it was quiet. The main streets were full of noise, flashing signs, and arrogant aliens who pushed humans aside. Here there was only silence and the sound of his own breathing. But that night something unusual caught his eye. A faint glow shimmered in the distance, coming from a courtyard half hidden by broken archways. Daniel slowed his steps, curiosity stirring inside him. The light was soft, not the harsh blue of alien lamps, but more golden, like firelight. He moved closer, cautious but alert, his heart beating faster. When he reached the courtyard, he froze. At the center stood a tall stone pillar, its surface carved with alien runes. Tied to the pillar was a figure, slender, small compared to the pillar's size, with long, silvery hair that shone in the strange light. Her wrists were bound by glowing cords, and her head hung low as if she was too tired to lift it. Daniel's eyes widened. She was an alien girl. Her skin was pale with a faint shimmer like pearl in the moonlight. She wore a torn dress of fine fabric that suggested she had once belonged to a noble family. Around her neck hung a heavy metal collar, glowing faintly with energy. At the base of the pillar, crudely painted in alien script, were words Daniel barely understood. He had learned enough of their language to read simple things. His lips moved as he tried to sound it out, "Take as you please." The meaning made his chest tighten. His fists curled, anger rising in him. The girl stirred faintly at the sound of his footsteps. Her head lifted and he saw her eyes, bright violet, glowing softly in the dark. They were filled with fear, exhaustion, and something else he couldn't name. Daniel looked around quickly, expecting to see guards or laughing aliens waiting for entertainment, but the courtyard was empty. The only sound was the wind brushing against the broken stones. He stepped forward, lowering his voice. "Hey, can you hear me?" The girl's lips parted, and a whisper escaped. "Please, help me." The words were accented but clear. Daniel hesitated only for a moment. His mind told him to leave, to turn back before he drew the attention of those who had done this. But his heart refused. He had seen cruelty before. Humans pushed aside, mocked, starved. But this was worse. Leaving her here felt like abandoning his own soul. He reached the pillar, studying the glowing cords. They were made of some alien energy, humming faintly like electricity. He touched one carefully, then pulled his hand back when it shocked his skin. The girl flinched at the movement as though she thought he might hurt her. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." Her eyes searched his face, uncertain. Daniel pulled a small tool from his jacket pocket, a piece of broken machinery he had kept for scavenging. With steady hands, he pressed it against the cord, trying to find a weak point. Sparks leapt and the girl gasped. He worked quickly, ignoring the sting against his fingers until at last the cord snapped. One by one he broke the bindings until her arms dropped free. She nearly collapsed, but Daniel caught her. She was lighter than he expected, trembling with weakness. Her hair brushed against his shoulder and he could feel her shallow breaths. "Thank you," she whispered again, her voice shaking. Daniel looked at the sign at the base of the pillar, once more. The words burned in his mind, filling him with a fury he had not felt in years. Whoever had put her here wanted to strip away her dignity and make her nothing more than an object of shame. He clenched his jaw, vowing silently that he would not let them succeed. "Come on," he said gently. "We have to get you out of here." He supported her weight as they moved across the courtyard. Every step felt dangerous. He kept expecting shadows to move, guards to emerge, or a voice to cry out. But the night remained silent, as if the whole city had turned its back on the girl. They slipped into the alleys, the darkness wrapping around them. Daniel guided her to the small shelter he called home, a half-collapsed building where he had built a corner with blankets, tools, and scraps of food. Inside, he laid her down on his bedroll. She shivered from the cold, so he pulled off his jacket and placed it over her shoulders. She clutched it tightly, her violet eyes looking at him with a mixture of confusion and relief. Why would you help me?" she asked weakly. Daniel sat beside her, shaking his head. "Because no one deserves what they did to you. Not you. Not anyone." For a long moment, she was silent. Then, as if gathering strength, she whispered her name. "Leora." Daniel repeated it softly. "Leora." The sound of it settled into his mind. A name to hold on to. A reason to keep going. He didn't know who had tied her there or why she had been marked for such cruel punishment. But he knew one thing for certain. From that night forward, he could not return to the quiet life of struggle and invisibility. He had chosen to step into something larger, a fight he barely understood, but could not ignore. Outside, the wind howled through the broken city, carrying whispers of danger. Inside, for the first time in many months, Daniel felt a spark of purpose burning inside him. He did not know what awaited them tomorrow. He only knew he had saved Leora, and that decision would change both of their lives forever. Leora woke slowly the next morning, her body still weak from exhaustion. The faint light of the twin suns crept through cracks in the broken roof of Daniel's shelter, spreading across the dusty floor. She opened her eyes and found herself wrapped in a rough but warm blanket, Daniel's old jacket resting over her shoulders. For a moment she didn't remember where she was. Then the memory of the pillar, the cruel sign, and Daniel's steady hands freeing her came rushing back. Her chest tightened with shame and relief. She turned her head and saw him sitting a few feet away, hunched over a small heating coil he had salvaged. He was cooking something, a simple meal made of dry roots and a small tin of broth. "You're awake," Daniel said without turning. His voice was calm, as though he had been expecting her to open her eyes at that very moment. Leora nodded weakly. Her throat felt dry, but he passed her a small cup of water. She drank slowly, every drop easing the ache in her body. "Thank you," she whispered. Daniel shrugged, stirring the pot. "You don't have to thank me. No one should have been left like that." She studied him, puzzled by his calmness. Humans were often spoken of as selfish, desperate creatures in her clan. But this one, poor and struggling, had risked himself to save her. His jacket smelled of earth and metal, and yet to her it felt like safety. After she ate a few spoonfuls of broth, her strength returned enough for her to speak. Daniel waited patiently, as though he knew she had something important to say. "My name is Leora," she began softly. "I was part of House Valen." Daniel frowned slightly. He had heard the name before. The Valens were one of the noble families of the Zaith people, rulers of districts and keepers of wealth. He had never expected someone like her to end up tied to a pillar in disgrace. "I was accused of betrayal," she continued, her voice trembling. "They said I shared secrets with outsiders. That I sold my clan's strength for personal gain. Daniel leaned forward, his brow furrowed. But you didn't? Her violet eyes burned with sudden anger. Of course not. I would never betray my people. But the council wanted me gone. I was too outspoken, too willing to question the corruption of my elders. They couldn't silence me with words, so they decided to shame me with punishment. She looked away, her shoulders tense. The pillar was not just punishment. It was humiliation. A way to erase my honor so no one would ever listen to me again. Daniel sat back, his jaw tightening. He had seen cruelty before, but this was different. This was not just about silencing someone. It was about breaking them completely. Why would they risk doing that to one of their own? He asked. Leora's lips pressed into a thin line. Because power matters more than justice. If my voice was gone, their lies would be safe. They never thought anyone would care enough to free me. For a long moment, silence filled the shelter. Daniel looked down at his hands, scarred from years of hard work. He thought about how humans were treated here, ignored, mocked, kept at the bottom of every chain. He realized that what had been done to Leora was not so different. She had been made invisible too, her worth stripped away. Finally, he spoke. Then we'll prove them wrong. Leora turned her head sharply, surprised. We? Daniel met her gaze firmly. You're not alone anymore. You said they framed you. That means there's evidence. Something we can use. Her breath caught in her chest. Part of her wanted to argue, to remind him that he was only human, that he could never face the power of her clan. But another part, the part that had watched him free her without hesitation, believed him. There is proof, she admitted after a pause. A data crystal. It contains records of trade agreements and secret messages that would expose the real traitors. But it is locked inside the Citadel archives, guarded day and night. Daniel smiled faintly, though it was more determination than joy. Then that's where we go. She shook her head quickly. No, you don't understand. The Citadel is not like these streets. It is filled with soldiers, machines, traps. If we're caught, they won't just punish me again. They'll kill you without question. Daniel's voice grew steady. I know. But I can't walk away from this. Not after what I saw. For the first time, Leora's eyes softened. She saw no arrogance in him, no hunger for glory. Only a quiet fire that refused to die. It stirred something inside her, something she thought had been crushed at the pillar. Hope. That evening, as the sun sank low, they talked long into the night. Leora described the layout of the Citadel. Tall walls carved from black stone, halls filled with alien statues, and the archive chamber deep underground. Daniel asked questions, listening carefully, sketching crude maps in the dust. He told her of his past as well, of Earth's decline, of his failed hopes for work on the colony, of the countless days he had gone hungry, but never stopped searching. His life had been one of quiet struggle, but through it all he had learned to endure. You've been surviving, Leora said softly, and yet you still choose to risk yourself for me. Daniel gave a small laugh. Maybe I was waiting for something worth fighting for. The words lingered between them. Neither spoke for a while, but the silence was not empty. It was filled with unspoken understanding, a fragile connection forming across the gap between human and alien. The next days passed with quiet preparation. Daniel gathered supplies, scraps of wire, old tools, pieces of metal that could serve as weapons. Leora practiced walking again, her strength slowly returning, though the weight of the collar around her neck remained heavy. At night, they studied the plan again and again. Daniel taught her tricks he had used as a scavenger, how to move silently through alleys, how to use shadows to hide, how to set small distractions. Leora taught him about her people's technology, the way their machines worked, how their energy locks could be tricked by sudden surges. They were two worlds colliding, yet somehow fitting together. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Leora stood at the doorway of the shelter and looked out over the city. The lights of the citadel glowed in the distance, sharp and cold. "Do you really believe we can do this?" she asked softly. Daniel stepped beside her, his eyes fixed on the same horizon. "I don't know, but I know we have to try. If we don't, they win." She nodded slowly, her violet eyes reflecting the moonlight. For the first time since her fall from grace, she felt the strength to stand tall again. Together, they turned, back toward the shelter where maps and tools waited. Tomorrow they would begin the most dangerous journey of their lives, and though fear still lingered in their hearts, it was matched now by something stronger: trust. The night air was cool, carrying the distant hum of alien machines and the faint roar of transport ships above the city. Daniel adjusted the straps of his small pack and checked the tools he had hidden inside. Worn pliers, scraps of wire, a battered knife with a dull edge. Nothing special, but all he could manage. Beside him, Leora wrapped her thin cloak tighter around her shoulders. Her violet eyes glowed faintly in the dark, watching the citadel walls in the distance. "Are you ready?" Daniel asked quietly. She nodded, though he could see the hesitation in her face. "I have no choice. If we fail, everything ends here." Daniel gave her a small smile. "Then let's make sure we don't fail." They moved together through the alleys, their steps silent. Daniel led her along paths he knew from his scavenging. Days, narrow lanes where the shadows were deep, broken fences where no guard would look twice, ruined buildings that offered cover. Leora was surprised by his knowledge of the city's underbelly. To her people, humans were outsiders, yet this one seemed to know more about survival here than many of her kind. As they reached the edge of the Citadel district, the change in atmosphere was clear. The streets widened, the stone grew darker, and smoother and glowing towers stretched upward. Statues of Zaith warriors lined the gates, their carved eyes staring coldly. The Citadel itself loomed above everything else, a fortress of black stone and shimmering shields, guarded by tall, reptilian sentries with energy spears. Leora took a slow breath. "Once we cross inside, there is no turning back." Daniel looked at her. "Then we don't look back." They circled the outer walls, avoiding the main gates where patrols were thick. Leora pointed to a smaller section, half hidden behind a cluster of storage buildings. "There," she whispered, "an old service passage. It is rarely used, but it leads to the lower halls." Daniel crouched near the gate, inspecting it. A metal panel glowed faintly with alien symbols. He pulled out a wire and a small metal shard, pressing them against the edges. Sparks crackled. The lock resisted at first, humming angrily, but Daniel's persistence paid off. With a sharp click, the glow faded, and the gate slid open a crack. "You did it," Leora breathed, surprised. Daniel shrugged. "Machines are machines. Doesn't matter who built them. They all break the same way." They slipped inside, closing the gate softly behind them. The service passage smelled of damp stone and old energy residue. Their footsteps echoed faintly, but they pressed on, guided by Leora's memory of the halls. As they moved deeper, Daniel noticed how tense Leora's shoulders were. Her breathing was steady, but forced, like she was holding back fear. He slowed his pace so she could walk beside him. "You don't have to hide it," he said softly. "You're scared. I am too." She looked at him, startled by his honesty. For a moment, the weight on her chest lightened. "I was taught never to show fear. But with you..." She hesitated, then gave a faint smile. "With you, I feel I don't need to pretend." Daniel returned the smile. "Good. Pretending only makes it heavier." The bond between them, fragile but real, grew stronger with each step. Soon they reached the lower halls. The air here was cooler, lined with glowing crystals that lit the path. Strange machines stood idle against the walls, their purposes unknown to Daniel. They moved carefully, hiding whenever footsteps echoed in the distance. Twice they had to press themselves against cold stone as patrols passed by. Daniel's heart pounded each time, but the guards never noticed. Finally, Leora pointed ahead. A tall archway led to a chamber guarded by 2 sentries. Beyond it lay the archive, the place where the data crystal was kept. "We have to get past them," she whispered. Daniel thought quickly. Fighting was not an option. He searched the hallway and spotted a loose pipe near the ceiling. Pulling out a piece of wire, he tied it to a stone and tossed it far down the corridor. The stone clattered loudly. Both guards stiffened, their eyes glowing as they turned toward the sound. "Go check," one ordered. As the two marched away, Daniel pulled Leora forward. They slipped through the archway before the guards returned. Inside, the archive chamber was vast, filled with shelves of glowing tablets, data crystals, and holographic records. The air buzzed with quiet energy, like the hum of a giant machine. At the center stood a pedestal glowing faintly. "There," Leora whispered. "That's where it is." They hurried to the pedestal. A crystal floated above it, spinning slowly. Its light was sharp and pure, unlike the dull glow of the others. Daniel reached for it, but an energy field shocked his hand back. He winced, pulling away. "It's locked," Leora said, frowning. "The field responds only to council bloodlines." Daniel looked at her. "Then it responds to you." She hesitated, her hand trembling. "If I touch it, alarms may trigger. The system knows I've been cast out. It might reject me." Daniel met her eyes firmly. "Then we take the risk. This is our only chance." Slowly, Leora placed her hand on the field. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the energy flared, surrounding her fingers in bright light. Daniel tensed, ready for alarms. But instead, the field faded and the crystal dropped gently into her hand. She let out a shaky breath. "It accepted me." But before they could celebrate, voices echoed from the hallway. The guards had returned. "Hide," Daniel whispered. They ducked behind one of the shelves just as the guards entered. Heavy footsteps thudded across the chamber. Daniel held his breath, his body tense. Leora pressed close beside him, her violet eyes wide. For a moment, their shoulders touched, and even in fear there was comfort in the closeness. The guards searched briefly, muttering about strange sounds, then left. Daniel exhaled slowly. "That was close," he whispered. Leora clutched the crystal to her chest. "We have it now. We must leave quickly." As they crept back through the passages, Daniel felt the weight of their task pressing down. He had seen how much this crystal meant to her. He had seen her pride, her shame, and her strength all tangled together. She was no longer just an alien girl to him. She was someone worth risking everything for. They reached the outer gate again, slipping back into the shadows of the city. The air outside felt different now, sharper, heavier. They carried with them not only the crystal, but the knowledge that their actions had placed them directly in the path of danger. Back in the shelter, Leora set the crystal on the ground. It glowed softly, filling the room with light. She looked at Daniel, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You didn't have to do any of this," she said softly. Daniel shook his head. "Yes, I did. You deserve justice. And I'm tired of watching people like you, people like us, be crushed by those in power." Leora's lips curved into a faint, almost fragile smile. "You speak like a warrior, Daniel. Not like the weak human they think you are." He chuckled. "I'm no warrior. Just stubborn." But Leora shook her head. "No, you are more. Tonight you showed me that strength is not only in weapons or bloodlines. It is in heart." The words struck deep, inside him. For years he had been overlooked, dismissed, and made small. But here, in her eyes, he was something more. As the night wore on, they studied the crystal's glow, planning what to do next. Outside, the city continued as if nothing had changed. But in that small shelter, everything was different. Too unlikely. Allies had taken a step that could alter the balance of power, and their bond, growing stronger with each moment, would be the force to carry them through what was to come. The glow of the data crystal filled the small shelter like a captured star. Daniel and Leora sat close to it, their faces half lit by the soft light. For a moment, they allowed themselves to breathe, to believe they had succeeded. But deep down, Daniel knew the most dangerous part was yet to come. "They will know it's missing by now," Leora whispered, her voice tense. "The Citadel guards are not fools. The moment they find the pedestal empty, they will search the city." Daniel nodded. "Then we can't stay here long." He studied her face, pale and determined despite the exhaustion pulling at her. She had risked everything by touching that crystal, and now she carried the proof that could restore her honor. But the danger was greater than either of them had faced before. "What happens when you show this crystal?" Daniel asked. Leora's violet eyes glowed faintly. "The council must listen. The crystal contains their secret messages, evidence of their corruption. With this, I can stand before the elders and reveal the truth. And if they refuse to..." "Listen?" Daniel pressed. She hesitated. "Then I will be silenced forever." Daniel leaned back, his hands tightening around his knees. He hated the thought of her facing that alone. "Then I'll stand with you," he said firmly. Her eyes widened slightly. "But they'll kill you. Humans have no voice in the council. They will not allow you to even stand in the chamber." Daniel gave a small shrug. "Maybe they'll try, but I'm not letting you face them without help." For a long moment, Leora just looked at him, studying the stubborn lines of his face. She realized then that Daniel was not only helping her for justice, he was helping her because he cared. That thought warmed her chest, giving her strength she thought she had lost. By dawn, the streets of the colony were already stirring. Rumors spread quickly. Whispers of a break-in at the Citadel, guards on edge, and search parties sweeping through the lower districts. Daniel and Leora slipped out of the shelter, cloaked in plain rags to hide her noble features. They moved, through back alleys, keeping their heads low, but it didn't take long before trouble found them. A group of Zaith guards blocked the street ahead, their glowing spears raised. "Halt!" one barked. "No one passes without inspection." Daniel's heart pounded. He glanced at Leora, who clutched the crystal hidden beneath her cloak. Running would draw attention, but waiting could trap them. "Follow me," Daniel whispered. He pulled her down a side path, weaving quickly through broken fences and stacked crates. The guards shouted behind them, giving chase. Daniel's legs burned, but he kept going, pulling Leora with him until they reached a narrow bridge. "Over a drainage canal, go," he urged. Pushing her ahead, she ran across, her cloak whipping in the wind. Daniel followed, but as he reached the other side, a spear struck the ground near his feet, crackling with energy. Guards swarmed from the shadows, surrounding them. "Hand over the girl," one sneered, "and the human may live." Daniel's chest tightened with fury. He stepped in front of Leora, his body shielding hers. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The guards laughed, the sound harsh and cruel. "A human thinks he can fight us? You'll break in a single strike." Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed a metal pipe from the ground and raised it like a weapon. His hands trembled, but his eyes were steady. Leora's breath caught. She had never seen such defiance from one so underestimated. The first guard lunged. Daniel sidestepped, swinging the pipe with all his strength. It clanged against the guard's armor, not enough to wound, but enough to stagger him. Another came from the left, and Daniel ducked, slamming his shoulder into the alien's chest. The impact knocked the wind out of him, giving Daniel a brief chance to strike again. But there were too many. Energy spears hissed through the air, forcing him back step by step. Leora tried to help, throwing a small shard of stone at one of the guards, but they ignored her. They wanted Daniel first, to crush the insolent human. Pain exploded in Daniel's side as a spear struck him, sending him sprawling. Leora cried out, rushing to his side, but Daniel pushed himself up, his face twisted with determination. Blood trickled from his lip, yet his eyes still burned. "Stay back," he gasped. "I won't let them touch you." The guards closed in, mocking him, calling him weak. But their laughter faltered as Daniel rose again, pipe in hand, refusing to fall. Strike after strike rained down on him, yet he met each blow with stubborn resistance. He fought not with strength but with heart, his every move fueled by the promise he had made. To Leora, watching from behind, it was unlike anything she had ever seen. Warriors of her clan had trained for years wielding power and skill, but none of them had shown the unyielding spirit that burned inside this struggling human. "Enough!" one of the guards barked, raising his spear for a final blow. Before it could fall, a sharp voice rang out from the shadows. "Stop!" The guards froze, their weapons lowering. From the darkness emerged an elder figure, draped in fine robes of the council. His eyes glowed with recognition as they fell on Leora. "So it is true," the elder murmured. "The girl lives." Leora stepped forward, clutching the crystal. Her body trembled, but her voice was steady. "I live, and I carry proof of the lies told against me." The elder's gaze shifted to Daniel, battered and bleeding but still standing tall. A strange expression crossed his face, half disbelief, half respect. "This human," the elder said slowly. "He defends you as if you were his own blood." Leora lifted her chin. "Because he has more honor than those who condemned me." The words hung heavy in the air. The guards glanced uneasily at each other, uncertain. The elder raised his hand, silencing them. "Bring them to the council chamber," he ordered. "If she speaks of proof, then we will hear it." Daniel swayed, on his feet, his strength nearly gone. Leora rushed to his side, supporting him with her arm. He leaned against her but managed a weak smile. "Told you I'd stand with you," he whispered. Her eyes softened, tears glimmering at the edges. "And I will not let them forget it." As they were escorted toward the towering citadel, Daniel's body ached with every step, but his spirit remained unbroken. The reckless gamble had nearly cost him everything, yet it had forced the council to listen. For the first time, the truth had a chance to shine, and it was carried not only by a noble's daughter, but by a struggling human who refused to bow. The citadel gates loomed above Daniel and Leora as the guards escorted them inside. The stone walls seemed taller than mountains, carved with the proud history of the Zaith people. Golden torches flickered along the path, casting long shadows across the marble floor. Daniel walked slowly, his body aching from the blows he had taken, but his spirit was unbroken. Beside him, Leora carried the glowing data crystal tightly against her chest. The council chamber was vast, shaped like a circle. At its center lay a raised platform, and around it sat the elders of the Zaith, tall, imposing figures robed in colors of red, black, and silver. Their glowing eyes watched in silence as Daniel and Leora were brought forward. The guards stopped, lowering their weapons, and the elder who had called for their presence stepped into the circle. "Leora of House Velan," the elder declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You were condemned for treachery and cast into shame, yet you return here with a human at your side claiming to hold proof of your innocence. Speak now, and let the council judge your words." The chamber was so silent that Daniel could hear his own ragged breathing. Leora straightened, her violet eyes burning with defiance. "You condemned me because I spoke against your corruption," she said, her voice steady. "You feared the truth, so you silenced me. But lies cannot remain, hidden forever. This crystal holds your secrets, every false deal, every betrayal you pinned on me." Murmurs swept through the chamber. The elders shifted uneasily, though some stared at her with open disdain. One of them leaned forward, sneering. "Do you expect us to believe the word of a fallen daughter? And worse, when she comes dragging a human into our sacred halls?" Daniel clenched his fists at the insult, but he stayed silent. He had promised Leora he would stand with her, and he would not fail now. With slow determination, Leora stepped forward and placed the crystal on the pedestal at the center. Light flared, and suddenly the air filled with voices, recordings of secret conversations, trade agreements signed in shadow, and messages plotting her downfall. The chamber echoed with evidence, undeniable and clear. Gasps rose from the gathered crowd. Some elders shouted in anger while others turned pale with shame. The sneering counselor tried to stand, but the elder presiding over the chamber slammed his staff against the floor. "Silence," the elder commanded, His eyes blazed as he looked around the circle. The crystal speaks true. The conspirators among us have been revealed. Leora's chest rose and fell quickly, relief mixing with fury. She turned her gaze toward Daniel, her heart swelling at the sight of him standing tall despite his wounds. Without him, she would never have reached this moment. The presiding elder stood. Leora of House Valen, your honor is restored. The shame forced upon you is lifted. You have endured suffering with courage, and you, human. He paused, his sharp eyes narrowing as they fell on Daniel. The chamber murmured again. Humans were rarely acknowledged in this place, let alone addressed with respect. This human risked his life to defend what is right. The elder continued. He faced our warriors with nothing but stubborn spirit. Tell me, Daniel of Earth, why would you risk everything for one not of your kind? Daniel's throat was dry, but he forced his voice steady. Because what was done to her was wrong. I've lived my life invisible in your city, treated as if I was nothing. But I couldn't ignore her. She didn't deserve it. And if standing with her meant standing against all of you, then so be it. His words struck like a spark in dry wood. Silence fell, heavy and thoughtful. For the first time, many in the chamber truly looked at him, not as a weak human, but as someone whose courage could not be denied. Leora stepped closer, her voice strong. You call yourselves guardians of honor, but it was this human who showed me what honor truly is. His heart is stronger than the weapons you carry, and it is his courage that brought the truth into your sight. The presiding elder raised his staff once more. So be it. The conspirators shall face judgment. Leora is restored to her rightful place. And let it be known. He hesitated, then allowed his voice to soften. That not all humans are weak. This one has shown a strength that demands respect. The chamber erupted, some in agreement, others in protest. But the words had been spoken, and no one could erase them. As the council dismissed, guards dragged away the disgraced elders who had plotted against Leora. The crowd that had gathered outside whispered in awe at the sight of her walking free, her head held high, a human at her side. That night, back at the shelter, Daniel finally allowed himself to collapse onto the bedroll. His body ached from head to toe, but his spirit felt lighter. Leora knelt beside him, her hand resting gently on his arm. You kept your promise, she said softly. You stood with me when no one else would. Daniel gave a tired smile. And you showed them the truth. You don't need me anymore. Her violet eyes shone as she shook her head. No, Daniel. I needed you more than I ever knew, and I will not forget what you've done. For a moment they sat in silence, the bond between them stronger than words. Outside, the city buzzed with new rumors, whispers of the human who had faced the council and lived, of the alien girl whose honor had been restored. Daniel had come to this world as nothing more than a struggling wanderer, invisible, among the powerful. But now he had changed something far greater than himself. He had given hope, not only to Leora, but perhaps to every human who walked the colony's streets unseen. As the twin moons rose above the broken rooftops, Daniel closed his eyes, letting exhaustion finally take him. And Leora, watching him sleep, felt for the first time in many cycles that tomorrow might hold something brighter, not because of power or rank, but because of courage, loyalty, and the unyielding heart of a human who refused to bow.